Okay, hi guys. So I have been working on a little side project the last few weeks, and I thought my results were maybe interesting enough to share, so I'm making this short little video. Quick background on how this came about. So I was actually chatting with a cousin of mine, Justin, who's back in Illinois. This was a couple months ago. And one of the topics that came up was tax policy, and this question of whether the rich pay their fair share in taxes. It's discussed quite a bit. And that kind of prompted me to jump back into kind of reading up on tax policy. So tax policy is an interest of mine. And that reading turned up a lot of documents, but it also turned up these two videos that I'm showing here, which are pretty interesting when you compare them against each other. So if you have time, before you finish this video, I highly recommend watching both of these. So the one on the left is by a channel called PragerU. They're on the side of the issue where they're arguing that taxes are high enough and we should not raise them further. And then the Vox channel is on the side of the issue where they're arguing that taxes are not progressive enough and we should tax the wealthy more. Watching these together is interesting because it's a fascinating little micro study on how two groups can approach a problem in good faith, both parties in good faith, and look at the same reality, look at the same data, but come to vastly different conclusions based on just nuances of how the data is presented, how it's selected from. So that's really interesting. If you have time, again, I recommend watching these. If not, I'll do a quick summary before I get to my project, because these two videos kind of inspired the side project. So let me do a quick summary of these videos. So move this over here and jump to okay, so I'll overview the PragerU video first. I'll do an overview, and then I have critiques of both of the videos, so I'll give those as well. Okay, so the PragerU video looks at federal tax income, and at this point in the video they're looking at the top 10% of all earners. They note that the top 10% of earners make 43% of the income, but pay more than that fraction, so 71% of all taxes. And then they zoom in even further to the top 1% and note that the top 1% are earning 17% of all income, but paying 37% of the taxes. And if you look in the sources for the video, you'll come across, they cite this source quite heavily. This is Tax Foundation. They have a chart that I think summarizes the data a little better. So if we look here, we see that the bottom 50% of earners have an average effective tax rate of 3.3%, whereas the top 0.1% have an average effective tax rate of 21.7%. And based on this, the Prager video argues that tax policy in the US is already pretty progressive, and we don't need to modify it further. Two complaints here. If you watch the Vox video, you probably know what I'm about to say. So a limitation here, a major limitation, is that they only look at federal taxes. The PragerU video only looks at federal taxes. And I don't think this is the best approach, because there are lots of other taxes that have to be paid, right? So sales tax, state income tax, you can't avoid those. Whether you pay the tax when you earn the check or when you spend the check, the government gets the money either way. So I don't think it's appropriate to restrict your perspective just to federal taxes. The other objection I have is that the PragerU video argues that payroll taxes, so FICA, should not be considered taxes, but should be recategorized as what they call an insurance payment. And that also doesn't ring true for me. If I work 40 hours and I get back my paycheck and I see right there on my paycheck that you've taken out, what is it, 7.65% of my income, and I can't opt out of that, it's not an optional deduction, and that money is going to, fund government programs, then if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. So I think it's better to consider those taxes. That leads me nicely to the Vox video. So the Vox video takes a more holistic view. They do look at income taxes, but they consider other categories of taxes as well, which I think is appropriate. Payroll taxes, including the half of the payroll taxes that are paid by the employer, which I agree with. I agree with that decision. So consumption taxes, sales taxes, they note in the video that these consumption taxes disproportionately affect lower income earners. And they also consider some taxes that affect wealthy earners more heavily. Two objections here. One is that although I agree that Vox is correct to include more taxes in their analysis, I disagree with how they've computed the income side of the equation. I think they have omitted some of the income that they should have considered. I'll explain that in a moment. The other objection I have is that not all earners are represented here. So actually this chart is not showing the full population of US earners. It's instead showing, it's omitted the lowest 11% of earners. And if you watch the Vox video, there was no indication of that. I'm not sure Vox even picked it up in there while doing their research. You have to do a bit of digging in their sources to kind of uncover that. So for both of those complaints, let me go to their primary source. So this is where Vox is getting their numbers. This is a website run by Sayez and Zuckman from Berkeley, two economists. The economists have a website and a book and some research papers that they've published and some nice data sets, and all of that is kind of working together as one package, and that's where Vox got their numbers. So what is why do I have issue with the way Sayez and Zuckman have reported effective tax rate? So this is one way you might imagine you could compute the effective tax rate. So on the top you have all the taxes you've paid, on the bottom you have all of your income. So you might start by adding up income. So you might add up the income that you've earned at your job and elsewhere and add that to transfer income. So for example, SNAP, food assistance. And then on the top you can add up the taxes you paid on your earned income and the taxes you paid on your transfer income, because you do pay taxes when you go to the store and buy food with SNAP, for example. So you could add that up together here. Sayez and Zuckman do not take this approach. So they omit transfer income, which I don't think is appropriate, because if, let's say I get some money, some food assistance from SNAP, that under Sayez and Zuckman's approach, that money will not be counted as income, but when I go into the store and spend that SNAP money on food, they will count the tax on that SNAP money. And so I think this artificially inflates the effective tax rate for some earners. And so that brings me to my project. Actually, before I get to my project, just so you know I'm not making anything up, let me take you to their actual website and show you that I'm describing things accurately. So if you scroll down here, you'll see a chart very similar to what appears in Vox. You'll see over here on the left relatively high tax rates for low earners, and on the right you'll see relatively low tax rates for high earners. And again, here there's no mention of the fact that people have been omitted or income has been omitted. You have to dig into the details for that. So let's dig into the details quickly. Let's go to the FAQ. I'm interested in this fact here. Don't you overestimate tax rates for the poor by excluding transfers from your measure of income? So this is my first complaint. They give some justification here for why they've done that, and then they present their solution. So how did they fix that problem? We addressed this by restricting the population of adults to adults earning more than half the minimum wage in pre-tax income, as described in the online appendix. So not counting all of the income leads to inflated tax rates, so they drop off the lowest, it turns out to be about 11% of earners. So for more details, let's go here to the online appendix and scroll down a bit. Okay, this paragraph here is very important. Our estimates of effective tax rate restrict the population to adults earning more than half the federal minimum wage in pre-tax income. People with very low pre-tax income, below half the federal minimum wage, earn transfer income, so temporary assistance, SNAP, SSI, veteran benefits, etc., which is not part of pre-tax income. They do pay sales taxes on that transfer income when it is consumed. As a result, they have high, sometimes very high tax rates as a fraction of their pre-tax income. We avoid that problem by restricting the population to adults with more than half the minimum in pre-tax income. So I disagree with this solution because the lowest 11% of earners are not the only people getting assistance, right? So those numbers are not propping up only the effective tax rates of the lowest 11%, but also the entire lower end of the spectrum of earners. So I think a better approach, first of all, if your methodology is giving results that seem odd or unreasonably high, I think the better approach is to change your methodology. But if you're not going to change your methodology and you want to exclude transfer income, then I would err on the side of openness and leave that data in and not omit it. So this kind of prompted my project. When I saw this, my first immediate thought was I'd really like to see what these numbers look like without these adjustments made. And so Sayers and Zuckman have published the data that they used to compute their numbers and also the code that they used to generate the results. So credit to them for being open and in that way. The code is written in Stata, which is a language primarily used for statistics. It requires a license in order to run. I don't think I'm eligible for one of those licenses because it's intended for institutions. So what I've done instead is read their code and rewrite it in something a little more open source. So I'm rewriting it in Python and more specifically the Pandas data manipulation library. So that brings me to my project here. I've been writing this code for the last couple of weekends. You're welcome to go get it, and you can generate the results that I'm about to show, or change things if you disagree with what I've done. So let me go to my results. So this first slide here of results, this part of the effort was just replicating Sayers and Zuckman's results. So I needed to make sure that I was doing things accurately and replicate their results in my own code. So what do we have here? 2018 effective tax rates by decile, under half minimum wage dropped. Here I'm following their approach. They drop earners under half of minimum wage. And this chart will look very familiar. It's close to what was shown in the Vox video. We have income deciles here. We have effective tax rate on the y-axis. One difference, so I did validate against Sayers and Zuckman's results, not just the graph, but I looked at their charts as well, their spreadsheets, and I confirmed that for each of these deciles I was within 1% of their reported results. One difference you'll notice here is that Sayers and Zuckman have another couple hundred lines of code they've written to specially treat the top 400 earners, and they split those out into a separate bar so that you can look at them separately. That rate is lower. I've reported it up here just as a snippet from their spreadsheet. So the effective tax rate for the top 400 earners was 23%. Okay, so now that that's been done, it's relatively trivial to undo the corrective step that they took and actually leave in all earners. So that is, here's what that looks like. So the lowest decile now has a quite high effective tax rate. And so once I had this, I wanted to see if I could go even one step further and kind of fix the original problem, which was that not all income is considered. So would it be possible for me to add back transfer income? And here things get considerably more shaky. I need to caveat this pretty heavily. I'm not an economist. This is not my day job. There will certainly be different calls that could have been made on how I approach this. I'll show you my results first, and then I'll explain some of the rationale. So here I've done my best to account for received welfare and add that into the appropriate deciles. And this looks maybe more like what we might expect, more reasonable. In the interest of openness, I should show you exactly what I've done. So let me go to my code here and scroll down to the correction that I do for transfer income. So there are 6 major welfare programs in the U.S. TANF, Medicaid, SNAP, SSI, EITC, and housing assistance. So for each of these, I went online. I spent at most a couple of hours trying to get good numbers for the money spent on these programs and how many people they affect. I've listed my sources here along with the numbers that I came up with. If you disagree with something here, please feel free to modify it and rerun and produce your own results. What I've done here at the bottom is sum up the total transfer payments, which come to $211 billion. I should note here that I have omitted Medicaid. The reason I did that, the reason I didn't include this $557 billion in Medicaid transfers is I didn't think that Sayers and Zuckman would have counted taxes on Medicaid payments. That didn't seem reasonable to me. So, so I omitted that, but if you think I'm wrong, you can add that back in. Okay, so now that I have total transfer income, I chose to split this up evenly among the lowest 3 deciles. And the reason I did that is there are roughly 20 million individuals in each decile, and most of these programs are targeting roughly that average. If you wanted to do something more intricate, more elaborate, I think that would be appropriate. Okay, so I'll put a link to this repo in the video description. I think these results are interesting. I think this might be, for me, this might be a useful starting point if you wanted to have a discussion about tax policy. I do hope that some of you who are Python aficionados and maybe even have backgrounds in tax policy will take a look at my code. I'd be very appreciative of that. I'm certain that there are things I could have done better. It's possible I even made some mistakes in my code. I've reviewed it as thoroughly as I can, but it's still just one set of eyes, so I very much appreciate feedback. Any errata I will post in the video description. So that's all I have, guys. Thanks.